Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity. We're here to talk about The Expanse Season 3 in its entirety, just to give an overview of the season. And I'm joined by the usual special guests who've been joining me off and on all season. So it's great to have the whole gang together to talk about Season 3. So let's start with Darrin. Darrin, thanks so much for joining. I know you missed the finale last week, so you might have a few more things to say about that one as well.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to get to dive in. In fact, there was a couple of the episodes that I really enjoyed that just happened to be my off week. So, yeah, I think there's a few points I'll get to dive into. Really excited to get to talk to you and Akton and Dawn all about this. It's just, it's a great gang. I can't wait to dive in.
Cool. And also joining us, just discovered The Expanse this year, Don Willi. Don, thanks so much for joining for the Season 3 discussion.
Thank you for having me as always. And yeah, this was a great show to discover. Or rediscover, because I actually watched like the first 2 episodes during season 1, and I don't know what the hell happened, and I fell off. And you're like, "Hey, you got to get back on this one." So took your advice. Great advice. Can't wait to talk about it.
Cool. And of course, joining me as always, Akton Tamko, my brother. We've talked about this a lot, but thanks so much for joining for this discussion.
Of course. Always up for talking about The Expanse, and look forward to recapping the season.
Cool. So I thought the format that we might do for this video is since this season 3 was pretty much 2 different stories. Like there's a part 1 and there's a part 2 to the season. So I thought I'd sort of format this discussion in the same way. So we'll start with the first part of the season, which is the first 6 episodes that cover the ending of book 2, and then just dividing that into 3 categories. First, we talk about Anne and Aaron Wright on Earth, and then talk about like the UN ships and Admiral Wynn and Southern, all them. And then the third category is with Avasarala Holden and Jules Paramount, all that fun stuff on Io. And then part 2 of the season, we'll get into that and then divide that into 3 sections as well. First, we'll start with Anna and Melba on the Thomas Prince, and then move on to the Rosinante with Holden and Miller and all that sort of jazz, and then finally finish off with the Behemoth storyline with, Drummer and Ashford, and then the ending finale. Cool. And so let's actually start with thoughts on the season as a whole, both parts, just the entire season. What did we think of it? What did we think it worked? I'll start with you, Don Willi. What were your thoughts on the season?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, this was pretty interesting because, me not being a book reader, when it came to like the mid-season, I was like, this feels a little weird for this thing to be happening right now. And then when it picks back up, it was like, the funny thing about it is the break in the season where you get the shift. It's like, yeah, it was a little bit of a hard break. It was, like kind of a hard left turn. But once things kind of picked back up again, I was like, oh, you know what? I almost didn't mind it for a moment. There were things towards the end that seemed a little rushed. But, like thinking on it, as I have been for the past couple of days, some of the stuff, I'm not sure if there was a way for them to adapt it from the book to stretch it out long enough. So I think, with any adaptation, some things get lost in translation, and they can't be put properly to screen without possibly boring the fuck out of everyone. So overall, I like the season. I can't wait to see what they do with the next one when it comes on Amazon. And hopefully Amazon won't make the mistake of saying, hey, binge! Because that would be bad.
Cool. And we'll get at you, Darrin, next. What were your thoughts on the season as a whole?
As a whole, I really enjoyed it. I mean, You know, as I had mentioned before, as we talked about it, I actually kind of like the mid-season split because to me it kept a certain momentum going from what we had last season, how they had sort of split it like halfway through, and we got to see the whole, pursuit of the proto-molecule and heading to Io and Jules Pierre Mao, and seeing that sense of urgency and everything that was happening. I really enjoyed the flow, that kind of trying to get the whole rest of the episode done in 7 episodes, sort of forced upon it. And then by switching in the middle, I know that threw a lot of people off, but to me, it was like, good. I know the way that shows go. We'll get our little introduction, then we'll have some build up, but at least, by the last couple episodes, we'll be barreling forward again. So I didn't mind it. It's like, great. This keeps it from being a slow start into a season. It gets kind of a little switch of directions, to see where everything was laying out. So I actually kind of like that. And then going from a lot more of the kind of personal pursuit there, with Prax, going after his daughter and everything, to the giant, more global, like here now we've got this giant ring and everybody's got to come together and check it out. It gave really a different feel to the second half of the season that I thought was a great build, going from the personal to the universal, one might say. So yeah, I really liked how they set up the season, and again, the way that told the story, it kept the momentum going really quick, which is one thing that this show has done really, really well.
Cool. And Atkin, your thoughts on season 3?
Well, I've kind of talked about my thoughts a bit as we've gone along. I think I've made it no secret that I found the mid-season change very jarring. And I've also said several times that I wish that they had just done one book per season. Like if they were able to do book 1 in one season, book 2 in one season, and start season 3 with all book 3, one cohesive storyline, I think it would have been better. Maybe this is just my expectations, what I'm used to in a TV show. If you do switch a plot in the middle of the season, usually there's like a mid-season break, like you have a month or two in between the two switches, so it feels more natural. And to me, it just felt jarring. And then not only that, but I never really got as into that storyline as I was into the first half of the season storyline. I never bought Melba as a villain. The drummer stuff was just okay. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's bad. I definitely enjoyed it overall, but I would definitely say easily my least favorite season of The Expanse is not even close. I think season 2 is way up here and season 3 is way down here. Season 2 was one of the best seasons of probably any show, or definitely in the conversation. I thought season 2 was amazing, but the first half of season 3, which continued with season 2, I loved, and then it kind of like fell flat to me. And not to say that I didn't enjoy it, because we've talked about this every week, and I definitely enjoy a lot of it. I'm not saying that it sucked or anything, but yeah, I hope it's better in season 4 as what I come away with.
So you liked season 1 better than season 3?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. that is interesting to hear, because, yeah, I heard the perspective of a lot of people were saying, oh, this second half of the season, it only felt jarring, it only felt rushed to you because you read the books and you were expecting it. And I heard from some people who hadn't read the books being like, well, I didn't feel rushed to me. I think it just feels rushed to you because you have read the books. But I actually still contend that if it would feel more rushed to those who haven't read the books. And that seems to be your experience, Atkin, that it felt really rushed and jarring, more so for you not having read the books.
Yeah, I actually really think that your experience having read the books really enhanced your enjoyment of it as opposed to mine, because it was all new to me. I had no expectations. And although you've said oftentimes that things don't live up to the books, you've also said that they do things very, very well. And you're always comparing it to the books. To me, I'm watching it for the first time, just taking it as it is. And I was not thrilled about the second half of the season storyline. I mean, there's not to say that there aren't things that I loved about it, like the whole thing with Miller and all that stuff. And I definitely like the ending I thought that was really cool, and what we're setting up for next season, I did like. So I'm not saying that I totally disliked it, but I feel like if I had read that book and really liked that book, I probably might have a different perspective on it than just coming in cold. But maybe that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a higher opinion of season 3 than you do. I think it's just behind season 2 for me. I did like it better than season 1, but as I said, like I think I see why a lot of people do really like this season latch on, because I think there was a lot of great moments, a lot of great scenes, a lot of great acting, a lot of great special effects. But as I said in my overall review, the pacing is really off, and it's the glue that holds the season all together. It feels very disjointed with that split in the middle, and I do feel like the book 3 material was extremely rushed, and maybe I feel that way because I've read the book. But actually, when you touched on this earlier, Don, with that half of the season, having read the book, I am very strongly of the opinion that this could have been stretched out a lot longer and kept interesting and not been boring. I think a lot of things, key, like exciting moments, not character building stuff for sure, like particularly with Melba, but there's a lot of exciting stuff, especially in that finale, which I think we missed. I would actually recommend reading that 3rd book, because I actually think it's the only case where I think the book is better than the show, because with the first 2 books, I think the show did better. But that's, again, not to say I didn't like season 3. I did really like season 3. It's because of a lot of great moments, great acting. It just didn't have that cohesion to me that season 1 and season 2 did. But I still think this is a step up from season 1, because season 1 had a lot of filler episodes, a lot of missteps, I should say, where the story kind of meandered a bit, and the showrunners didn't seem to know what they were doing. But we didn't get that at all in season 2. We didn't get any like really bad episodes. So it's like, oh, this is so boring. Get on with it. Although, the stuff with Drummer and Ashford being trapped in that room, maybe that was the one exception, but that was just the one episode. But for the most part, it was entertaining. It was intense. I just think it could have been structured better, in the second half that covered book 3 could have been better paced and not so rushed. But anyway, let's go ahead and let's jump into, so let's cast our minds back to the first half of the season. It's been a while, but I want to talk about this a bit. And first storyline I want to cover is the storyline with Anna and Aaron Wright and Gillis. So this is interesting because Aaron Wright was, he's an interesting villain that's been around since the very first episode, but he was like the only sort of known character in this storyline, because Gillis was kind of introduced in season 2, but he was just a background character pretty much, and he become more front and center. And then Anna, of course, is a new character who wasn't in this section of the book, so this is a show original story, which I actually thought worked very well. I liked how they introduced her here. I think that helped with the character introduction later on. Now, I've heard a lot of opinion from a lot of people, a lot of commenters, a lot of chatters, that they don't like Anna. They thought she was the weakest character of the show. I disagree. In fact, I've heard some people say that she wasn't as good as the books, but I actually think I liked her portrayal on the show better than her portrayal in the books. I thought she was more boring in the books. And part of why I liked her better is because we get this introduction of her at the start with the interactions between her and Aaron Wright. I thought were golden, because with Avasarala off in space flying around the belt, we need someone to be a foil for Aaron Wright. And I thought Anna filled that role very well. I thought the confrontation was very good, where Aaron Wright wrote that speech for Gillis and sort of tricked her and was like, ha, and giving her the evil eyes. That was a great moment. But the finale, the way the storyline ended, was kind of like a petered out. Like, Aaron Wright was such a great villain. It seemed like kind of a simple way for him to go to just like, I don't know. I think it could have been more. But anyway, your guys' thoughts on this overall storyline. Darrin, let's start with you.
Yeah, I've got to agree with a lot of what you had said there. Anna originally didn't grab me quite as much. It took a little bit of time of spending time with her until I really was enjoying her as a character. Just because I thought with her intro, especially that run-in with the soldier there and dealing with the protesters, felt a little bit contrived. Felt almost like okay, we're using this scene in order to describe this person's character. I mean, not that not every scene does that, but that one felt particularly designed that way. And I think as a book reader, she wasn't in the this part of the book or this book. I think I remember you saying there's more of an inserted character. So did that work? Yes, especially considering, and I know we're not going to get into it, her then appearing in the second half of the season through what would be book 3, I think, worked so much better because we had spent this time learning about this character and her moral center and what she did. So while initially I wasn't sort of grabbed with her, I really did appreciate her being included in that storyline, and especially with Avasarala being out in the belt, it gave us our personal connection with Aaron Wright and the boss and everything, the Secretary General storyline. So I really enjoyed that. It was some great back and forth. We did get to see as the Secretary General sort of, like you said, using her speech and doing this thing, and Aaron Wright's whole, like, sitting next to her during the whole speech. You know, she was like twirling the mustache. See what I have done. I have taken your words and used them to my own advantage. So I mean, we got to see really the depths of what Aaron Wright would do, not only manipulating the Secretary General, but then manipulating everyone around him almost openly. So that was a great, I think, sort of build up with that arc. And then, yes, I also have to agree the kind of wrap up bit was a little bit of a letdown. I mean, I liked her receiving the signal from Avasarala and then suddenly, you know, having that ammunition against Aaron, right? You know, that was perfect. But when he was confronted, you know, you kind of expected a little bit more thing. They did. It just sort of like ended in scene like, oh, well, yes, you've caught me. And this is what I did. And I'm glad I did it. It sort of wandered off. And there was such a great character. He was so manipulative, so around. It would have been nice to have seen something a bit more climactic associated. I mean, you can't really make everything big, but that was one that I did thought sort of ended a little bit quickly. So, yeah, it was great. I loved seeing Aaron Wright's whole rise and fall. I just wish when they did wrap up that storyline, even when they moved into the second part of 3 and you hear what happened, it's like, oh yeah, and he retired and he went to jail and everything's fine. You know, just especially if you were going to do that, make that final moment, make that last scene, at least stretch it out, do something creative with it. Again, satisfying, but a bit more abrupt than I thought it was going to be.
Okay, Akton, what are your thoughts on this whole storyline here?
Yeah, and I also was glad that Anna was introduced in this storyline. I really didn't like her in the second half of the season, so I can't imagine what I would have felt about her if I had never met her before. If she'd just been some brand new character thrown at me, I would have been like, "What the hell is this?" Like, I will say she had a good ending, but through most of that second half of the season, I was like so bored with her storyline. So I can't imagine what I would have felt had she not been introduced in the first half of the season. So I'm really glad. I think that was a really good choice. I loved the scenes between her and Aaron Wright and Gillis, and how she and Aaron Wright are kind of each pulling an arm of Gillis and pulling him in different directions. I thought that whole dynamic worked really well. But I also agree that the Aaron Wright decline was very anticlimactic. I think we talked about this when it happened, when we did that discussion of that week. It was, I said at that time, well, surely Aaron Wright, this can't be the end of him. He's got to be coming back. But nope, we're moving on to a completely different storyline. It has nothing to do with him, and this is the end of him. And that I'm like, so now in retrospect, knowing that really was the end of him, and that he's not coming back at all, that makes it even worse for me. I'm like, wow, that was just a really anticlimactic ending for someone who had been a really great villain for 2.5 seasons. Just for him to suddenly go down like that was disappointing. But other than that, like, I did really actually enjoy this storyline during the first half of the season.
Cool. And Don, your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things that I found very interesting about Anna's character, especially in the beginning, is that in most sci-fi, we usually don't get any kind of religious figures. Like in terms of having someone with our real world religions. So to see someone who was kind of grounded in Christian faith in 23rd or 24th. I'm sorry, what I don't exactly remember what century we're in, but for it to be kind of far flowing in the future, you have all of these different scientific phenomenon and the advancements of technology. That's something that we normally don't get in most sci-fi. So I thought that was a pretty interesting uh, addition to the show to begin with. And then her trying to be the moral compass and knowing that she had past dealings with Gillis and Aaron Wright, and to see things kind of flipped where Aaron Wright was really kind of trying to little finger the whole situation, but he didn't get the climactic ending that you would expect for a character of what seemed to be his importance at the time. It was a little jarring because it was like, all right, I got the evidence. I turned the evidence over to Gillis. He admits, yes, I did it. I did what I thought was the right thing. You should think it's the right thing too. Well, yeah, I don't think it's the right thing. The guards take him away, and then it was like, that's it. And it's uh, like what? That's all. Wow. Okay. All right. I mean, I guess you got to do what you got to do with that one. And I thought that was interesting. Her with the her trying to keep up the family dynamic, while also uh, trying to get into this political realm, which is someplace she really didn't want to be. She got tricked into doing this whole thing as a way to show people it's like, hey, look, we have this very moral figure who's on our side. You people out there, you like immorality, and look, we got the perfect person here with us. So you trust her, it means you got to trust us too. And it's like, well played, but you might want to cover your diabolical plans a little better if you're gonna have someone of this magnitude that you're trying to prop up as like, hey, look, we can't be doing anything nefarious because why would this person be here if that's the case? Um, so when she finally gets all the information in order to bring Aaron right down, I was like, oh, okay, cool. That was nice, but still, it was a bit of a shock, and that was one of the things that unfortunately seemed rushed during the season, was just this kind of introduction, the back and forth with her and Wright and Gillis, and then kind of the wrap up, and it's like, all right, they're done, time to move on. It was like, oh wow, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that now. Now just let's move on, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. Darren, you talked about how you felt that the Aaron Wright storyline wasn't wrapped up as well when they moved into the second half of the season, which I agree. But I would also add that Gillis, because at the start of episode 7, we see Iva Sarala giving her speech. She's now the Secretary General. Gillis has resigned. We never got the story behind it. I don't know if they're going to give us the backstory on that in season 4, or they kind of moved beyond that now. But it seemed like because Gillis was such an important thing, why did he resign? Was he forced out? Did Iva Sarala force him to resign, or was he just cowardly and want to protect his legacy? Yeah, that was one thing that I felt like. I understand them switching tacks to the ring gate whatever during the second half, but it seems like if they had smoothed over some of these lingering storylines from this first part, I felt maybe the transition would have been a bit better.
Yeah, I was, and I think that's really one of the things too, especially because in that speech, Avasarala seems to indicate that, it's like, and we thank him for his service, like it was a resignation. But later on, they do talk about, that he got in trouble, that he was forced out, that he was a traitor. There seemed to be more of a negative association with him. So it sort of threw me off going in the second one of, like you said, what were the actual circumstances? Is that the scuttlebutt inside? Is that official? Do we have two different stories going on? Do we have some people know and some people don't know? So yeah, that was something I really wish, because again, also another character we spent 2.5 seasons with, kind of building up and seeing, especially the whole moral quandary that he was dealing with in the beginning, in the first part of the season, and then seemingly willing to just push it all aside for his own interest. Even when he got caught, he was just like, he'll take it. I'll be the one that stopped it. My legacy won't be in tatters after this point, with Ehrenreich being caught for that. Where he just said, my legacy won't be that of war or something. But anyway, yeah, that was one stuff that because of that rush, we didn't get that. And maybe they'll touch onto it, or maybe they're just going to push it aside, kind of like Ehrenreich seems to have been, and just be like, hey, we pushed through book 3. We're heading into the big, larger expanse, I guess. I don't mean to keep doing that. It's right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So, yeah, Abkin, Don, do you have any final thoughts on this before we move on to the next?
No, I'm good.
Good. Cool. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and talk about the other part of the first half of the season. This is one of my favorite storylines in the whole season. Was the storyline we get on the Agatha King, which in the books it was just Wynn's ship, but here it's actually Souther's ship. But Wynn comes on board and assumes command because they got Kotiar, and Kotiar starts to fill Admiral Souther in on what's actually going on, and Wynn, of course, doesn't like this and relieves Souther of command, but he's still on duty though. But he has, and I love how they introduced us to these lieutenants, and they got to we got to understand the kind of loyalty that Souther sort of inspires on them, and they of course get together this mutiny to take on Wynn. And it's funny because it's pretty much all the work was done by his lieutenants. Souther actually kind of fucked it up because when it was time for him to move and take command, he hesitated and went to Kotiar to get more information, and he was a bit broadcasted to Wynn and made it a bit too obvious, so Wynn was able to shoot him, take him out, and we got that awesome mutiny scene on board the ship. And then we also get the interplays with the Martian fleet, when they have the Earth fleet and the Martian fleet meeting each other, and the Martian fleet decides to take the side of Souther's forces. So I love that. To me, this was something that was much improved from the books, because I know I've talked a bit about the stuff I didn't think they did as well as the books. For me, this was a shining example of the show stepping up its game. So Avkin, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on this storyline?
Oh yeah, absolutely agree. This was one of my favorite storylines of the season as well, and I'm always down for a good space mutiny. I think I've said that before. And this was a very good one. And you're right about Souther. He kind of screwed up. He kind of Ned Starked it a bit. He should have really taken. He really should have taken his opportunity and not broadcast Wynn what he's doing, and allow Wynn to eventually win and kill him. But it made for a great scene though. That whole mutiny scene where Souther takes command, and then his command is very short lived. All of that was very well played. Yeah, I don't have really a whole lot to say about it other than I love this as a space mutiny. It was really good.
Cool, awesome. So Don, what were your thoughts on this?
Admiral Souther. I'm just like, I wanted to believe in him. He, seemed like he was trying to do the right thing. And unfortunately, as Acton already stated, Ned Stark did, and it's like, oh wait, no, we must take the moral high ground about doing this, and I need to gather more information. Are you sure this message is authentic? And blah blah blah. And it's just like, the man came onto your ship and told you to sit the fuck down. He told you to get the fuck off your own bridge. I was like, yeah, you know what? Unless I have business for you, you stay the fuck out of here. Goodbye. And all of your people can stay the fuck out of here as well, unless they are willing to follow my orders. And I'm like, listen, not for nothing. If I'm the admiral of a ship or captain or whatever may have you, no one's coming there and kicking me in the nuts like that and just thinking they're just going to get to walk all over me. Fuck that. You're supposed to be a military commander, and you sitting there, I'm not sure if this is proper. I'm not sure that this is the right thing to do. Motherfucker. No, man. Okay. You already know that everyone is involved in some scandalous shit. All right. Sometimes you just got to step out there and take a leap of faith. And unfortunately, because he waited too damn long, he caught a bullet in the chest. And it's like, you know what? I'm happy to see him go, because I hate when I see characters just do the dumb shit that is like, why would any rational human being allow themselves to be put into a position where it's just like, yeah, I'm probably gonna get fucked over, but I'm just gonna walk into being fucked over and accept it with pride. And I'm just like, no. But listen, Wynn was a gangster. He came around with the pimp glove on, and just slap everybody that he could. You're not part of slap. You want to question? Slap. In this case, it wasn't a slap; it was gunshots. But you get my meaning here. And then when the whole mutiny happened, which absolutely amazing scene. You're thinking that maybe it's possible that Wynn doesn't get to shoot off those nukes, and it's like, nope. Yeah, I might have taken one to the side here, but let me punch up these numbers real quick. And oh yeah, oh wait, you're still alive? Not for long. Bang. So yeah, it was definitely a thing. What the hell is this? Yeah, it was definitely a thing where great scene. Even though Gwen actually wound up dying and things didn't get to keep progressing in that particular fashion with this particular character and all that, still exciting interplay. So glad to have seen that stuff, but it was like, god damn it, man. You are the most spineless fucking supposed leader, one of the most spineless leaders I have ever seen. So yeah, he got what was coming to him. I feel no sympathy for his loss.
Cool. So Darrin, your thoughts on this whole storyline?
Yes, this was the lesson in commitment part of this season, it seemed to, because that really was kind of the big definitive difference there between Souther and Wynn is commitment. Souther didn't have that commitment. Wynn.
Oh, I think you're on mute there, Darrin.
Yeah, you just mute yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I'm just doing hand puppets here in the background. As I was trying to say, to me, this was the commitment part of the season. This was, who is more committed. Everything comes down to that commitment. Souther wasn't committed, and Wynn was. That's why Wynn was. Souther hesitated, and it was something that he had sort of dealt with constantly once Kochiar came on board. And then how is he going to deal with it? What is the information that he has? Then when he commits to getting the information, then he's got to back it all up, and then he's got to check this while his own, subordinates are trying to push him like, this is all going wrong. You got to make a move. You're the captain. And so they're really, yes, I don't know, being blinded by his service, that he just believed so much that the way that the military was set up, that you follow the chain of command, you do the right thing, you check off the boxes, and it's all going to pan out just right. And that's not really how things go. When someone is more committed and isn't going to hesitate, they're the one that's going to pull the gun and put the bullet in your chest, which is just, of course, what happened. Yes, love Space Mutiny. Love the chance to get to a bit more of space battle. I mean, we had a little stuff with the Rossi, which I know we'll get into. But this, we got to see much more of the larger fleet movements. And the little bit of battle exchange there at the end as everything was going down. It was a very cool opportunity to be able to see a lot of these larger pictures. And it's one thing I've enjoyed about Expanse, taking its time and giving us these opportunities. What we want to see. Yes, we want to see the sci-fi drama. Yes, we want to see the interpersonal stuff. Yes, we want to see all the new cool things. But sometimes you just want to see ships in space shooting and blowing up other ships. And I really love the opportunity that we got to see with this. So yeah, it was, and then of course, I was really bummed how it all ends up. I love that Kochiar was able to end on a big win, taking out the proto-molecule and everything there at the end. But yeah, he was the one character in that whole battle. I was like, you got to find another escape vessel. You got to get out. We need you back. But he was to sacrifice to save others. So that was a bit of a bum. But like I said, overall, it was a really enjoyable part of the season. Not my favorite, because Amos is always in my favorite parts.
Okay, that's good to know. So we mentioned Kochiar a bit. I wanted to talk a bit about his death, because he wasn't sort of in the books, at least not in this section. So I was hoping that he would survive, but he did. So he sacrificed himself, and he had that little speech that he gave about how he's finally doing something right, which was a good, fitting ending for him. But I do wonder, because it was originally my theory before season 3 started, that they would keep him alive and have him in the Ringgate storyline, and have that be sort of a way to have Alva Sorella, that would be the way to involve her in that storyline, to have her there and have him be his agent for her. What do you guys think of that theory? Do you think that might have worked, or do you think it's better that they just killed him off when they did?
I wasn't really sure where they were going to go with him after Mist. I mean, I think that to me, that's always the kind of big question, is where do you then take this character going forward? So yes, I would have liked to have seen, but I mean, as we saw the kind of second half of the season, we didn't even see Alva Sorella that much, and he's sort of inextricably linked. So he gets to go out in a big way and then doesn't just disappear off in the background. So, I mean, it does work. And yeah, it does kind of, him being there, placing all of these characters allow us that more personal in. This is someone we've been really, part of with for a long time now. A big fan favorite, I think. So it does allow us that kind of personal in on stuff, but that becomes a question, especially as such a large and expansive cast as this show already has, let alone the new characters they're going to want to bring in. What do you do with the old ones? Do you let them disappear quietly like Aaron Wright and Gillis, or do you let them go out with a big bang like Kochiar does? So yeah, I would have liked to have seen him go on, but seeing how the show arcs and how everything is sort of set up, I think that was an appropriate way to say goodbye to this particular character.
Yeah, I was definitely disappointed at the time that he was killed off. I definitely was hoping that he would stay on the show. And at the time, of course, I didn't know what the next storyline was going to be. In retrospect, yeah, you make a good point. He could have been our eyes and ears for Avasarala. Could have been a way to get Avasarala involved. Although, on the other hand, I think if he were there, he would probably be on the UN ship. And if he was, I think he would have snuffed out the Melwa thing in like 5 seconds, and that would have been the end of it. Like, I think he's too smart that he would have like figured it out instantly. So that's the only thing that probably might not have worked. But yeah, I would have liked to seen him, and I definitely would have liked to see Avasarala in the second half of the season.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, Atkin. Cool. Don, did you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I actually thought he was gonna survive, and then once you see he's infected with the proto molecule, and he's sitting there kind of going crazy as he's planning to detonate the core. I was like, oh man, this is kind of a messed up way for him to go out, because you already knew once he got infected, it was like, well, shit, they don't know of any way to reverse that. So man, I guess he has to go. The crazy thing about that though is right before we saw him there, it was like, okay, oh well, I guess he's not gonna get infected, and he's gonna go and do whatever he is that he needs to do. So it was shocking to me to actually see him infected, because it was like, wait, when did that happen? Like, I don't remember seeing him get attacked or anything. So like, all right, well, I guess a deleted scene, or something that's just happened off screen. But he was a character that grew on me, and I was hoping to see him around for a lot longer. So that is a character who was missed, at least for a couple episodes, and then after a while, it was like, huh, okay, I guess I didn't really miss him that much. I mean, given the way the story panned out. So, but good character, and I wish we could have got just a little bit more with him.
Cool, great. So let's move on to the big storyline for this first half of the season. That is the Rosinante Avasarala. For the first couple episodes, we get Avasarala and Bobby Draper running from Aaron Wright, who's trying to kill them with the orders from the UN ships that are out there, and they eventually just happen to run into the Rosinante, and Holden, Alex convinces Holden, who doesn't really want to save them, and then once they keep not knowing who they are, and then they come on board, and he still doesn't really care about them, and Avasarala sort of has to sort of convince Holden to try to stop Aaron Wright, but where Holden at the moment, he's just fixated on helping Prax find his daughter, and that whole storyline was a really played out with rescue his daughter very time. I played that up. Oh, did you lose me? Am I here?
Yeah, you're breaking up. I think you might be back now. I think you might be back. But you kind of froze for a second, and then you're breaking up.
Okay, I should be good now. Well, anyway, yeah, just talking about Amos and Prax and how they're sort of the power team, and they go and save May, and you get that classic line, "I am that guy." I think people are seeing so many memes about it. People are quoting it like crazy. Really great line. And the whole confrontation on Io, which I think they built to perfectly, because they introduced it early on. I think the very first episode, Holden said he's going to Io. So the whole time they're like, let's get to Io. And they found sex. I think that was a really successful build up. But the one thing I will say, especially looking at this part of the season in retrospect, the stuff with Bobby running from Aaron Wright, and the stuff with like Holden, like having his problems with Naomi, and then they meet those Martian guys and they get into a little fight. To me, this was inconsistent pacing to the rest of the season, because to me this was a bit too drawn out, and they could have simplified it, shortened it, so they could have had more time to actually flesh out the second half of the season. At least that's my opinion. It seems like this part of the story moved very slow in comparison to the second half of the season, even though I did really enjoy the payoff, especially, the I am that guy and the whole resolution to them stopping the protomolecule hybrids, capturing Jules Paramount. And so that was a lot of fun, but it seems to me it would have been just as good if they cut it back a bit. I don't know any of you guys' thoughts on that. Don, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on this story?
Listen, I love the Prax and Amos stuff. Prax was not that guy, and we saw that from the very beginning. He's fumbling and stumbling around and trying to find his daughter. That heartbreaking scene though, where they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna send you guys back. There's a ship waiting to come and get you people, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm come with you, and the guy's like, no, you stay here. And then everyone gets spaced, and he's like, what the hell? He's like, yeah, you're a belter, so you get to live. The rest of them, fuck them. He was like, wow, that was cruel and unusual punishment for absolutely no good reason. Then there's the whole thing of Jules Pierre Mao and company kind of being one step ahead of all of them for a little while until they get to IO. And when that doctor is there, it's like this was someone he trusted, and the guy's like, oh no, I was saving your daughter. Don't you understand? I was the one that kept her safe. Look, and I hid her here so no one else would be able to do anything to her. And you could tell, like, for a second it seemed like Prax was about to buy the bullshit, and then it's kind of like, no, yeah, I'm gonna have to shoot you. But as he's standing there, gun in hand, trembling, Amos tells him, come on out, come out the airlock, man. You're not that guy. And then doors close. Amos turns around. I am that guy. I was like, oh, yes. And this was the season that really got me to like Amos, because the first two seasons I was kind of real iffy on him. But season 3, I think they really stepped it up with the character development and just showing, like, he's not just some mindless grunt, just a bloodthirsty killer. He actually does have feelings, even though the way that they tried to make it was like, oh, he can't feel. It's like, no. The feelings might be buried. They might be a little muted compared to most of the other people that he interacts with, but he does have feelings. He does have a moral compass, and I actually did love the fact that he was willing to go out of his way to save someone else's humanity. It was like, look, I've already gone off the deep end. I've already killed a bunch of people. Killing this guy isn't gonna do any more damage to me psychologically, but it will to you. So I'm gonna spare you this. Go be with your daughter, comfort her. Know that you got the revenge that you needed, and that was kind of awesome. I mean, it was brutal, but still awesome.
Cool. And Atkin, your thoughts on this storyline?
Yeah, as far as Amos goes, of course, it's such a great line that I am that guy. Even though it was really predictable, and it seemed like they drew it out a little bit too long, because I think I said I am that guy like 3 times before Amos did. I'm like, come on, just say it. I am that guy. Like, I know that's where you're going with it. But it was awesome. Like, it was probably the best character moment for that character thus far in the show. Now, getting back to what you were saying, Mark, as far as it being a little drawn out, I absolutely agreed. I think we talked about it at the time. I remember saying that I think, what was it, episode 6 that they wrapped this up? Was that right?
Yes, yeah.
Because I remember saying, well, episode 5, they have to get to Io, but then somehow they dragged it up for another episode. I definitely think they could have chopped an episode off of that part of the story and finished up sooner. I definitely do agree with that. However, on all parts, very satisfying ending. The Amos thing we've talked about, and I like that they finally maybe not resolved, but at least had some kind of conclusion to the Jules Pierre Mal storyline where, and for all I know, he comes back in season 4. I don't know, but the fact that they he's off the table now, he's not running around. Like, in contrast to Aaron Wright, I didn't think that it was anticlimactic. I think it was about time. Like, I think that it made sense for this to be the time where he is, put in prison or whatever. So all the way around, I like the conclusion to this storyline. And you've talked about this before, Mark. I would have liked a little bit more involvement from Avasarala, especially now that I know she wasn't even in the second half of the season, except for occasional cameo here and there. Hopefully they can rectify that in season 4 for that character. As I've said many times, was my favorite character in the show, especially in season 2. Amos had some of the badass lines this season, but last season she has some of the really badass lines. So that would be probably my biggest complaint, is especially now knowing that she's not even in the second half of the season, that they could have used her a little bit more. But other than that, I mean, I thought that this storyline wrapped up pretty nicely.
Yeah, well, that is interesting to hear that, because I thought, like, perhaps because Avasarala actually was involved a lot more in this storyline in the book, so I thought I was just being a snooty book reader here, wanting to see her more involved in this storyline. But you felt that way too?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so Darrin, what were your thoughts on this whole Rosinante taking down Jules Pierre Mal storyline?
Yeah, definitely my favorite part of the season, at least the first half there, mostly because, well, yeah, it's got Amos, but I love the kind of intensity. Like I said, that it was a personal mission, that we were going to save May. This was something for Prax. This is something the team had sort of agreed on. And this was having Holden really in that sort of commitment of being the captain to his crew. This is what the crew votes on. This is what we're going to do. Prax did all this and put it all to the side in order to help us, because we needed to do this thing. Now this is our time to turn it back for him. And so I appreciated that kind of the oneness of the crew in that sense. And seeing how Amos really was interacting with Prax. He seems to, if we've noticed sort of a certain pattern that Amos has, is he finds someone he kind of attaches to, and it becomes almost kind of their protector, to a certain extent. If you prove your value to Amos, he will attach to you. I mean, this happens with Prax throughout this season. It happens later in the second half with Anna in ways he kind of connects to, and was just like, I'm going to do whatever needs to happen, to protect you. This is sort of Amos's way. And, protection, again, in a lot of ways, it wasn't just physical protection. He was teaching Prax about, the necessity for putting things, away. And this is what happens if you don't, and things are going to get loose. You got to look out for tools flying around and such like that. And of course, we have him appreciating Prax's contribution of the plants to help clean the air and so on, his Prax panels that he has later on. So it was really nice seeing that kind of relationship sort of set up between those two. I really sort of enjoyed that bit. Holden dealing with Avasarala, again, trying to commit to his crew and not have to go and save the universe again, put everything out, more important than watching after his own people. So seeing that kind of back and forth was really good, especially because, and becomes really important in the second half of the season, Holden is a type of person that just ends up in the middle of things, and it's his job to help push it together, push it through, do the right thing, hit the button at the right time. This is sort of his place. This was a lot, I think, of his sort of lesson accepting that reality, or prepping him as to what he then really ends up doing more in the second half. Let's see. I do have to agree that, especially with Reload, that episode with the Martians, that really wasn't necessary. I mean, it did play out to a small extent, though not that much, in the giant space battle. But it didn't really seem... Its contribution wasn't all that big. I think what it was... Reload and Triple Point. I think if they had squeezed those 2 episodes into one, because Reload did have the big speech episode with Aaron Wright taking Anna's speech. So, I mean, there were some good parts in that, but you're right. It was like if you took half the material out of this episode and half the material out of this episode and squinch them in, it would have been a lot better. Just because I really viscerally remember at the end of Triple Point where they're getting ready to finally storm the base, and it cuts off and waiting for the big, mid-season finale or the big next episode. So I remember viscerally being like, no, this is what I've been waiting for. I gotta wait another week. So yeah, I think if they'd squeezed that in, and that might have dealt with what you would felt to be sort of a rushed second half. I mean, did they stretch out book 2 and then squeeze in book 3 so they could have half the episode here and half the episode, half the season here and half the season there? Yeah, I get that. But since there is no season break, and if you switch things, why do you have to go 6 episodes in? Maybe you do it in 4 or 5 episodes, finish 2, then switch over to 3 and sort of stretch things out. Again, it seemed to move well for me, all right, but I didn't have any expectations. I didn't know anything from the book. So yeah, I could see where things could have been worked out a little bit, but that I just wonder from a structural standpoint, if they sort of felt they needed to do a half and half. But yeah, I think I agree with everybody. If we lost an episode there in the first half, maybe a little bit more, just to sort of keep that pace going and then stretch out everything in the second half so you could have gotten that proper storyline and not rushed anything too much, except for the Trapped episode, which I know we'll get into. I think that might have been sort of a better structure kind of overall. And then finally, always good to see Jules Pierre Mao kind of get his comeuppance, him and Strickland also. We really got to see kind of the darkness in Strickland's character here, dealing with it. What was the line? Play keeps their cortisol levels high, and that's great for development of the proto-molecule. I mean, that was like the darkest line, and he's doing it with this big smile, like, yeah, we like play. It helps us torture them better. That seeing that darkness in this character, that total psychotic commitment, I think was good from an audience standpoint. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought the pacing was mostly good, except for that one kind of hiccup in the middle of it, which I would have liked to have been able to barrel a little bit more for, because yeah, wanted to get to IO, wanted to see this cleared up, and I think that they did that well. I think as they finally got to that kind of big climax finale part of that storyline, that I thought that they had done really well. So yeah, overall, I thought it was great.
Cool. Yeah. So, any last thoughts on this storyline before we move on to the second half of the season?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, giant space jellyfish. I had the same reaction as Amos. It was like, what the fuck is that? Like okay, we saw, proto molecule take apart that ship or the space station or whatever, and on Venus, and then just kind of sit there for a little while, and then when you see it coming off the planet and coming out of the atmosphere, it was like, it's a giant space fucking jellyfish, and then it turns into a ring, and it was like, okay, that's even more weird now because it's already kind of been established that the proto molecule is just kind of this technology beyond our understanding. It's just like this shit is just weird though, man. It's just fucking weird. And how are they gonna, how does this all get resolved? So that's my final thoughts on that first half of the season. Just weird ending.
Well,
Fucking weird.
Don, you touched on what I wanted to get into next, which is the which is the whole protomolecule thingy, which starts out as a jellyfish, and they sort of lay the groundwork throughout the season, sort of build it up by having the Katoas saying "work finished soon," and like the very ominous way. And I always remember when I asked for speculation of what it is, I always remember Darrin saying it was that they're working on an entertainment system. I always think of that. I always think when it flew out, I was like, "Oh, it's an entertainment system. Everyone's going to go in and listen to tunes and watch some TV." But yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on the revelation of finding out what it is. That it's the ring, and of course, by the end of the season, we find out that it is sort of the ring gates that kind of like stargates that take people instantly to other parts of the galaxy. And stuff. So before we get into the crux of the second half of the season, just thoughts on overall on what the protomolecule thingy is, and did this surprise you? And did you think it was a good revelation that worked for the show? So anyone who feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I thought. Well, I mean, I enjoyed it because we hadn't really seen much of what was going on the planet of where the protomolecule was doing really since Miller crashed into Venus there. So it was good to kind of get that catch up of what was happening. I thought it was a dramatic way of reintroducing. Yes, we did get that very cool sort of break apart the spaceship hold sequence with the way that the protomolecule is able to, and that seems to be its special power, separate everything into its component parts. I thought that was very cool, but this was, I mean, it was an interesting way, it was certainly a dramatic way of bringing the protomolecule back, because we had just dealt with the sort of personal story of May and Katoa and that sort of transportation of what Jules Pierre Mao was and Strickland were trying to adjust and connect with, which was just sort of a soldier, basically a format of war or bombs or anything like that. Whereas then suddenly you see this giant creature, jellyfish looking ship thing burst out of the clouds of Venus. I mean, if you can't really show the difference in perspectives, as humans are like, oh, look at these tiny little bang bangs we can make with it. And the aliens are just like, oh no, this is what we're talking about. I mean, it was a very dramatic way of sort of reintroducing the protomolecule from in what appeared to be an invasion force standpoint. Here it's like, are we adjusting this thing that's here? It's like, no, it has its whole own plan that it's trying to do. So, and it left us with that big question of curiosity. I mean, before we saw it go and turn into the ring and do it all, it was like, oh my God, what is this? Is it going to try and seed Earth? Is just this a bunch of pods? Is it going to go and seed Mars, a different planet? Is this a battle group? We had all of those questions, which, again, I think was a great way to sort of transition into the big ring storyline and going, oh, this is what it went up to do, which then was more like, I'm impressed and confused at the same time. What is this for? So, yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed the largesse of the revelation there.
Akton, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, in the end, I do like the revelation at the end of the season. Once we put it all together and look at it all in context, like, oh, there's work and all of that stuff. Though the transition from the jellyfish to the ring was sort of sudden for me. Just like, oh, there's this jellyfish floating around, and now it's this ring that people go into. I was like, I guess I was a little bit confused at the time, like what exactly was going on. But seeing the end now that it's the Stargates and looking at a bigger picture, I do think that it was a good revelation. It does. Again, I think it has a lot to do with the transition from the first half of the season to the second half. It's like I almost would have wanted a little bit. I don't know what I would have wanted. A little bit more between the jellyfish and all of a sudden there's a ring. It could just be because the whole thing in general just felt jarring to me, and that could just contribute to that feeling. But in the end, putting it all together, I actually do really like what they did.
Yeah, and to be fair, I actually found this transition just as jarring, if not more so, in the books. Even though it was in between book 2 and 3, I did when I started book 3. Like at the end of the book 2 is this weird thing popping up out of Venus, and all of a sudden at the start of book 3, it's a ring gate. I'm like, what? Wait, when did this happen? What the hell? Did I miss a chapter or something? What's going on here? So, if anything, the show handled it better. But yeah, I definitely agree. It was a bit jarring. Cool.
Well, what are they going to have, like a mid-season episode there of just like it's going past Mars, now it's going past Saturn, now it's going past Neptune. It's just in between the first episode of just sort of have it slowly moving through the solar system. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I could have done that in the background, like focus on anything and just be like, have the thing on the news. Oh, this weird jellyfish continues to float by and not focus on it or spend too much time on it. But yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of things in the second half of the season. I think we're just
and it could have been you could have had it floating around in the background and like speculation. People like, what is it? What's going on? Instead of just one line from Amos, what the fuck is that? And then all of a sudden it's a ring. Like you could have had like, then you can have theories. What is it? What's going on? Like it could have been. They could have been made very interesting actually, but. I don't know. It did feel sudden to me, but it is what it is. It ended up being good in the end.
Cool. So let's go ahead and get into this. Let's get into the second half of the season. And let's start with Atkins' favorite storyline, the Thomas Friends with Anna and Melba.
Yay, my favorite storyline.
I don't. There's things I liked and the things I didn't like about this storyline. I'm looking at it from a snooty book reader's perspective, and I would actually say, and this is something I disagree with a few people who are in the chat here, is that I actually thought Anna's storyline in the book was really boring. I wasn't really looking forward to seeing it on screen. I thought the fact that they condensed it, I was perfectly okay with, because I was like, all right, we don't need to get enough of her. And I did actually like seeing her relationship with Tilly Fagan, and when Tilly died, and that drove Anna to go off to find Melba. And I also actually like the stuff with Anna actually in this part of the season. And I like that the thing with the guy who committed suicide because she ignored him. I think that was a good character moment for her. It was making her realize she needed to be more involved, which I think built up her character for the end of the season, so that when Amos came to her, look, we need to convince everyone to do something they don't want to do so we can save humanity. I think she was more like involved, like I need to not just ignore what needs to be done. So I actually kind of liked it. I would say I actually liked Hannah's storyline better than it was in the books. But with Melba, I think we were missing out on a lot of key character developments. Akton mentioned in the previous discussion that he wouldn't even know about the implant if I didn't bring it up, because I've read the books and I heard about the implant. I thought that was very poorly explained. I had expected the show to do a much better job, not just like explaining it, but portraying it. Like I was expecting these really cool, like slow motion action scenes, but they kind of just glossed over. But there were some things about her storyline I liked. I thought the actress, I can't fault her. I think she did a really good job. Like the scenes where she was crying over having to kill that nice guy. You totally believed that she did feel regret over this, which is why I have heard some people have bought her transition at the end of the season to helping Holden, because you do slowly see that regret side of her, and that was there from the beginning. But I think they rushed that a bit. I think that could have been done better. And I did really love getting the flashbacks of her and her father and her sister. I think that wasn't in the book, so that's something I really enjoyed seeing. I think that explained the family dynamic a lot more. But the final confrontation when Anna finally shocks her, that was a huge disappointment to me. Like, to me, that was, even though that wasn't the last we saw of Melba, that was a really, again, it reminded me of the Aaron Wright thing. It was a really anticlimactic way for her to go down. But anyway, overall thoughts on this whole storyline. Darren, let's start with you.
Yeah, if we'll just focus on the travel parts, until she goes and arrives on the Rocinante. Yeah, it was interesting. Melba wasn't a character that really connected with me all of that much. As I found out more about her, she just got a little bit annoying. I did appreciate her final twist, and I think in some ways, yes, all of these stages were kind of important for her to go through. She had to vent that anger that has created, is just because, well, as we go to find out, she was the daughter that wasn't loved the most, and now this way she could kind of make it up for dad. I mean, we could see a lot of family issues coming up, even for the reasons behind her sort of obsession with revenge on Holden. Anna's line on this, again, we could see where, and I know that we'll get to this kind of at the end, that Anna's whole reason for being really, I think, summed up with that final scene with the radio transmission and such. And I think all of the first half of the season, and even the stuff that happened out in space on the UN ship, really was just sort of playing to that. Like you said, ignoring the one guy because she was so excited about being on the ship and seeing the ring that she missed what her actual reason for being there was, where her heart truly was. I found it interesting. I did like the interaction between her and the other reverend that was sort of the televangelist of the future. How she's so excited about being here and seeing the ring and this next step of humanity, and really is expecting everyone to sort of be on the same page as her, and yet he's just terrified and wants to get off the ship as quickly as possible. I think all this was an important way of really establishing Anna so much more. I mean, in the first part of the season, we got her moral commitment, but here we got to see, I think, a larger breadth of her faults as a person, of being obsessive, but of also the differences in her, of wanting to step into the unknown, wanting to be on the edge there. I think it gave a good reason for why she was out here. The only, and seeing sort of Melba, those little bits of connection, which sort of implied that this was going to be a character that she was going to pay attention more to, also, especially again because of the whole suicide scenes in the beginning, or sequence that happened in the beginning there. Now, having seen that problems were with Melba or Clarissa, and that she would remember this, and this would be a reason why she would pursue it a little bit more, and then find out who she really was. I think all of that really worked well. The only downside that I had really with this particular arc was her trip over to the Rossi. I think that was really surprising. That really felt almost like a Deus Ex Machina moment, because she's yelling at the airlocks, the last thing that we see, and then all of a sudden she pops up behind her and whacks her in the back of the head just at the moment that it needed to happen. And I had never really gotten characters. I know some people have talked that she was raised on the moon, or she had some space experience possibly that might have contributed to it. I didn't get that at any point, so it was much more shocking to me, of kind of like, what's she doing out here? But everybody has to get to the Rossi eventually, so then, that all worked, and it gave us a good way of seeing the effects of the ring and the medium and everything else on the larger UN ship. So we got the larger picture before we could deal with the smaller picture with the Rossi.
Cool. And Don, your thoughts on this storyline? Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I liked Anna's character development throughout the second half, because she kind of went in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and was like, "Oh, this is a new adventure," and not necessarily understanding the gravity of the situation until it literally came smacking her full force in the face. Um, so it was interesting to see the struggles that she had to go through in order to kind of maintain her sense of identity. She was a little apprehensive about like not really telling her wife about her going on this mission, before she went. It was kind of like, yeah, by the time you see this, I'll already be inside the ring, and I don't know if I'm ever even gonna get any transmission from you, but hey, been fun. I gotta go do this. I gotta go do the space exploration thing. So, yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk. Um, so it's interesting just seeing her interactions with the other people, and that one officer who comes up to her and is like, "Oh, I need your help," and blah blah blah. It was just kind of like, look, if you hadn't seen one of the previous, like when we had talked about this particular episode, I was just kind of like, yeah, look, that dude need to stop being a fucking wimp. Seriously, you're already in space. You're supposed to be a military officer, dude. Calm the fuck down. I mean, it seemed like he didn't do any kind of praying or meditating or anything. It was just like, oh man, oh, I'm here and freaking out, man, and Reverend Roll talked to me, man. Just gonna fucking end it all, you know. And so she's sitting up there trying to put the pieces together, after all this, and she's like, all right, all right, all right, I gotta back up from myself. Forget about the fact that I'm in like the most amazing environment ever. I need to, step back and comfort people, so people don't wind up committing suicide en masse, and then possibly, try to blame me for their lack of fucking fortitude. Um, so that was a pretty interesting, like turn of events, and then with the whole thing with her and Tilly, and her finding out about Melba, it didn't exactly shock me that she got to the Rosanati, because I kind of figured that was kind of what was going to happen, because after she figured out what Melba was up to, it was like, oh, I got to stop her. There's no way I can just let her go on her rampage. And I'm going to talk about Melba in a sec, because you guys on the panel here know how I feel about Melba and Cardinal Doomsday. Cardinal Doomsday. Yeah. So, yeah, I liked Anna's storyline, and then her interactions with Amos, and in fact, oh man, and I'm not sure what is Oster. Oh man, I can't pronounce the name correctly. But yes, you brought up in the chat about Amos kind of seeming to dig Anne a little bit, because it was a little it was a little shocking to me. Well, not shocking, but it seemed a little out of place. Where as soon as the crew comes on board, it's like, oh, hey, Alex, yeah, you go and do whatever you gotta do. There's a pretty blonde lady over here. I'm just gonna find out what she's all about. So it was a little weird like that. And like I said in earlier when we did the review a couple of weeks ago, I was like, does he know that she's not into dudes? Like I don't know if he picked up on that vibe or not. So, but it seemed as going forward, it wasn't about a sexual thing with him. It was more of like, he found her to be fascinating, because in the middle of all of this kind of carnage and everything. She's there like, hey, I gotta help these people. I need to make sure that people are okay. And that was something that he needed to see in order to kind of help along with his character development. Because like I said, I think season 3 to me kind of cemented Amos as like my top 3 characters in the show, and part of that was his interaction with Anna. So yeah, it was interesting thing. I liked her story. I didn't really have too many issues with it, but one character I did have issues with, Melba.
So, Don, saving all of humanity is not good enough for you, huh? It's not good enough just to save the entire human race.
No. No. Okay, in the words of Stannis Baratheon, one good deed does not wash out the bad, nor the bad the good. So look, when we first got introduced to her character on the show, at least, we have no idea who she is. And it's like she has some grudge against James Holden. Not exactly sure why. She's obviously planting a bomb on the ship that she's working on. And then when the guy who's training her and escorting her around and supposed to be her partner kind of figures out like, hey, something's amiss, she automatically kills him and stuffs his body inside of a storage unit or something like that. Right, and then goes off and pretends like nothing happens. And then when guys joking with her like, "Oh man, you guys must have had a really wild night," and he's still sleeping it off. She's like, "Oh, shut the fuck up," and it's kind of like, "Oh, really? Oh, so that's the angle you're gonna play?" I'm like, "Fuck all the crocodile tears and all that. I feel so bad. Oh, I feel so bad about bashing that man's head in and folding him like a fucking accordion, and then to compound that, because she hates James Holden for bringing down her crooked ass father, let me go blow up this fucking ship, blame James Holden, and also send out a fake message about how the ring is for the belters and we're gonna attack everybody. Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm supposed to just be because she feels so badly that her daddy didn't love her. I'm like, the man was a fucking crook. Okay? He was a crook who sacrificed her sister and was willing to sacrifice the lives of however many people he could possibly sacrifice in order to get paid. He wanted money and he was willing to sacrifice the human race in order to get paid. And even with her knowing that her father was an evil asshole, it was still like, oh, but this is all James Holden's fault. So I'm going to kill anyone who gets in the way of me ruining his reputation and finally killing him. No, I'm sorry. The final turn, even though yes, I think they did set it up at least kind of well. It did seem a little rushed. But no. I'm sorry. There is no forgiveness for that fucking harlot. No. All right. I don't know. All right. And what you were saying about the implant thing, they did finally talk about the implant like later on when she's captured. But honestly speaking, I wish Amos would have blown her fucking face off. I wish she would have just been like, sorry, Anna, this broad has to die and she has to die right fucking now. Boom.
All right, cool. I want to get to Atkins' thoughts on his favorite storyline. So let's get. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and start with Melba because since that's what Don was just talking about. But I'll get to Aaron in a minute. But Yeah, I mean, I don't quite agree with the extreme level of all that, but I didn't like Melba either. I thought she was a mustache twirling villain all the way through, and I know Mark disagreed with me, but I thought that you point out we got her backstory, which was nice. So we got to see why she's a mustache twirling villain, but she's still a mustache twirling villain, very one dimensional. And then to all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just decide she's going to save all of humanity made no sense to me. And I know the scenes that they were trying to use to set it up, but it was way too rushed. If they wanted to make that that transition believable from mustache twirling villain to saving all humanity, they would have needed to start planting the seeds for that like 3 episodes earlier and start gradually building up to it. All of a sudden, to just Anna gives her one speech and then all of a sudden she's changed completely. Like it was a very, very hard pill to swallow. I did not buy that she did what she did. It just completely went against her character. And I understand it sounds like they probably did a much better job of developing it in the books, which I'm glad to hear because they did a shit job in the show. Like it was the worst part of the finale was that for me, the Melba sudden switch. And I never liked this character to begin with. When she was first introduced, I was like, who the hell is this? Why do I care about her? And I was never given a reason to care about her as a character. And I mean that, you can care about villain characters if they're well developed. I'm talking about as a character. And I just never bought into this character. So I just had a hard time with the whole thing. Now, as far as Anna goes, I was just I think I just had a little revelation as Don and Darren were talking is I think for me, the deal with Anna is I need her to play off of known characters. Like I need her, like her and Aaron Wright was great when she went to the Rossi, and then her and Amos was great. But I feel like the Thomas Prince, she was kind of like the most main character that was there because we had seen her in the first half of the season. Everybody else, unless I'm forgetting somebody, everyone else was brand new to the second half of the season. So she was like our only known character, and I guess I didn't like her as the one who had to carry the scenes. I prefer her as interacting with some of our more familiar characters and playing off of them, I think worked better for this character. So Aaron Wright in the first half of the season, and then the Rosinante crew, especially Amos. And I absolutely loved the interactions between Amos and Anna. And we talked about this last week. I didn't think there was necessarily anything sexual there at all. I just thought I don't think Amos was interested in her for that reason. I think it was more like he needed this mother figure. He needed somebody to like help him the way that she does. So I think that's kind of more what it was. At least that's how I read it. But anyway, yeah, that part was great. It was just once you get to the Rossi, we're golden. But I just don't think she is strong enough of a character for my taste to carry scenes. And I think that's probably why her and then Melba, who I didn't like at all, I was just like, through all those scenes. But things did pick up when she got to the Rossi. So I wouldn't say I totally hated her whole storyline just up until the point where she got to the Rossi. Though I do agree with Darren's point that it was kind of sudden. It was very Deus Ex Machina, her appearance there. But I kind of overlooked that in retrospect because of the fact that I do like that she did get to the Rossi, and I did like her character better from that point on.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting take in it. And I can definitely see that point of view that she's better playing off of other known characters. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's move over to the next storyline which is the Rocinante. I'm trying to focus mainly on the stuff before the finale, before they go to the Behemoth. We'll cover that when we get to the Behemoth. But with James Holden, I think I said this in my review of the season overall. I think this is the best season for Holden, in my opinion. This is where I liked him the most. This is where I think he shined the most. In particular, the second half with his scenes with Miller, talking to the Miller. I absolutely loved it, and I think the actor did an amazing job of portraying this. Like some of the best scenes we got the all season, I think, was with him, where like the Rosnate had to duck and hide into the ring gate. I thought that was extremely intense, and when he activated the circus and we got all those weird trippy visions, I absolutely loved that. It reminded me of like 2001 or something. And then, like, seeing, we talk about how Amos was bonding with Prax, and we talked about how Amos was bonding with Anna, but we also got Amos bonding with Holden, which what they didn't focus as much on, but to me was more gratifying, because this is something that I'd been building, because I just went back and watched the first couple of seasons. They hated each other at first. They were like threatening to kill each other, like, oh, we were enemies. And then to see them, like, their Holden reaches out to Amos, it's like, you have to trust me. I never asked you for anything. I'm asking you now. And that was a really golden moment for me. And of course, seeing the reporters, Monica Stewart and Cohen on the ship, that is another part of the season I felt was very rushed. I thought the introduction was like, boom, here they are. Where, I don't know, again, snooty book reader, but they took a lot longer to establish these characters, why they were there, what was going on. And for me, it was just felt very jarring, and I didn't care about them as much as I did in the books, because they did just all of a sudden there, and then they didn't really seem to have that much dynamic. And it was a bit obvious that they were up to something, or at least the Cohen guy was up to something. And I thought that was a bit, I didn't care for that as much, but I did love the stuff. And of course, when Naomi comes back on the ship, even though her, conflict with Melba was a bit too short, in my opinion, it was great seeing her take care of Alex and Amos. And it was a touching moment again for me when she told Alex said, I'm not staying behind. We have the family together. And so they emphasize that family dynamic. And of course, I kind of glossed over the whole Miller thing, which I absolutely love, because I remember when we did our episode 6 discussion, Afkin, you were saying that, oh, I really want to see them touch on Miller again. I was trying to keep my poker face on, like, get your poker face on, because I knew it was coming. And I was like really looking forward to it. And it was really great. So this wasn't like, we had all these discussions before. Is this really Miller? Is it not? But it's kind of Miller, it kind of isn't. So it's not full on Miller. So one could even call him Miller Light. Now, sorry. Anyway, Alkin, let's start with you. What were your feelings on this whole storyline?
Yeah, well, I don't know how to follow up with Miller Lite, but first of all, I wanted to touch on what you were saying about Monica and that other dude. No, it's not you just being a snooty book reader. I was probably hit harder than you were. Like, who the fuck are these people? Where do they come from? Like, boom, they're just there, and then boom, they're not there, and the one dude just dies off screen. Oh yeah, he died. He's gone. I mean, they were the way that they handled these characters was absolutely rushed and terrible, and almost. I mean, I know she ends up playing a role in the end, but I mean, if that was going to be the way they handled the characters, it was better off not even having them, and they could have, had the ending scene without her some other way. But yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Now, as far as Holden. It's interesting you bring up Holden and Amos, because that did kind of go under the radar a little bit more. You forget about how much they wanted to kill each other earlier, and I think actually the line was something like, "How many times have I asked you to trust me?" And he was like, "None." And he was like, "Well, I'm asking you to trust me now." And that was just such a great character moment for both those guys. So and you don't, I guess you forget about them because you didn't see them together as much, but that worked really well. And yeah, I don't know if I would go so far as to say it was the best season for Holden, but I definitely am glad that he is past his brief, Moby Dick stage, like, I must get revenge, at all costs must have revenge, like, Corn! Like, he just had to get fruit molecule, like, he just had to get revenge. I'm glad that phase is over, and didn't last very long. And I mean, it was over at the end of the second season. That he's moved on, and he has really evolved, and has become a really interesting character. And now we see how he deals with the unexplained, like deals with some dead guy talking to him and him questioning whether he's sane, or also whether he's been infected by the protomolecule, and running all those tests on himself. And all of that was a very, very interesting development for this character. So I definitely, I definitely love the way this character has evolved over the third season, and interested to see like how he evolves even further as we get into the Expanse. Finally, we actually get into the Expanse. We're getting out there. Overall, I thought this was a pretty Holden, to me, and I've said this before, was the strength of this second half of the season. Holden and the Miller dynamic, to absolutely my favorite part of this portion of the season by a lot.
So when you said before you were hoping for before the second half began, you were hoping for a touch up on whatever happened to Miller. Were you satisfied with what they did with him? Was it what you were expecting, or was it?
I was not at all what I was expecting. I mean, I didn't not even at all what I was expecting. I had no idea what to expect, to be honest with you. But I don't know. I don't feel like that's done yet, because we don't really know quite what this being is. You say it's kind of Miller, kind of not Miller. It's called the Investigator. Like, I don't have a good grasp on what this is, so I don't feel like. I guess it to be determined would be the answer to that, because I still need more information, I think.
Cool. And Darrin, let's get your thoughts on this whole storyline.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree that Holden was kind of the strong center for all of this, and it's great because it did become a very kind of personal journey for him. But in many ways, also, I think this season was a lot of Holden really stepping in and embracing and living up to that whole real captain persona and role. You know, like I said, it was kind of a little revenge oriented earlier on. It was one of those kind of bits of necessity. And then in this season, it became one of those where he was really looking out for his crew. I mean, we had the whole commitment to getting Prax and getting May back and doing all of that, and then being put that it was about the larger pictures, about stopping the war. And now in this season, it's really almost like he's there to look out for humanity. I mean, again, it's that much larger sense that he's realizing that he has to sort of step into. And in this episode, in this season, especially the back half, I think much more willingly. There isn't that reticence in there so much as just he's accepting what has to be done. And I think part of that universal grasp is what helped sort of him and Amos continue. I mean, they've been serving for a long time, so there's sort of a natural evolution and natural order that's going to fall into. But like I was talking about earlier with Prax's connection and with Amos, and what he also ends up connecting in with Anna, the theme that there is these are always people who care about someone other than themselves. For Prax, he was focused on his daughter. For Anna, was helping everybody that was on the ship and those that are wounded. For Holden, he's looking after his crew and then looking after a larger bit of humanity. I think because Amos is kind of a sociopath, I think we can all sort of accept that there's kind of that little bit of side to him, that in some ways he doesn't care about anyone else. He's already said that. I don't care about anyone else. I really don't. That's just my thing. I think because he recognizes that in himself, when he sees somebody out there that really does, he moves himself into that sort of protector status. And I think that was a lot of their relationship in with this. You know, yes, there was the whole, you know, how many times have I asked you to trust me? None. Okay, so trust me. But even before that, that scene when he goes in and to try and look in on Holden, he's like, hey, I'm not much of anything, but I don't I don't judge, so if you want to talk about anything, just go ahead and let me there. You know, he's putting himself out there to be the ear to kind of, you know, look after, not just in a physical sense like he normally does with the crew, but in this sense, that more emotional kind of like sense. Sure, as the captain, might be a little extra reason that he's worried there, but I think it really does show how much these characters have sort of evolved and connected over the years. Loved, of course, Naomi coming back. Was really bummed that she wasn't there at the beginning of the second half. Of course, she's got to get back to the Rossi. I loved her looking after the crew and kind of reconnecting and all of them, you know, especially Amos. Are you back for just a visit or for, you know, or to stay? You know, there's that element of family and how this crew really does sort of connect in together, I think, was established a lot with Naomi's bit there. As for Miller, let's do this right. I really loved, yes, like everyone else, I wanted to see what had happened with Miller. What's the sort of resolution of that? Did he just die in the crash, you know, being with the leftover remains of Julie Mao, or was there going to be something more? And I liked, you know, I kind of like the investigator. I like that sort of idea. I like how it was introduced slowly as just sort of an echo and then becomes something that's a little bit more and a little bit bigger. You know, I kind of like that. And Holden having that chance to really have that sort of personal breakdown. Is he going mad? Is he infected? Not being entirely sure of that, learning how to trust this thing that only he can see, and then pulling him onto the big mission there and connecting in with the big nucleus unit and library or whatever we want to call that kind of big scene that he had, which, by the way, and I wasn't here for the review, so I'm glad that I get to sort of touch into it. That last sequence when he sticks his hand in the machine and he has that whole 2001 Space Odyssey sequence was stunning. I would have loved to have actually seen that on a big screen. Just that last few minutes of flashes and movements and him sort of twirling naked through space. And again, it was just, there was so much right there. And I think it was really earned with Holden's whole journey throughout that first part of the season, to kind of be in that moment and really have that large effect. So yeah, overall, I loved it. I loved the character movement. I loved seeing how everybody is still involving and how such a global, universal, you know, situation, problem, threat can end up really just having such a personal reflection, a personal moment, a personal stake in it. I loved how they balanced all of that out.
Cool. And Don, your thoughts on this whole storyline?
So yeah, Holden's storyline, the Rossi, everything there was definitely the anchor for the season. You know, when Miller first shows back up again, the only thing I was thinking was, I was like, wow, talk about a bomb drop. You know, it was like I wasn't expecting to see him again, except maybe in flashbacks or something like that. So to see him there again, and then it's like, wait, is he a figment of Holden's imagination? And then, you know, you get the whole thing about him running all of the different tests to see whether or not he was infected by the protomolecule, and all of this happening while he's got you know, this documentary crew there on him, you know, taping him 24/7, and you know, just seeing the crew dynamic with that, because they're like, okay, we have these intrusive people who are definitely here for more than just to see, like, oh, what is it like being the famous James Holden? You're a hero. You know, you're Luke Skywalker in the flesh now, kind of. It was it was interesting, and yeah, fuck those two reporters, especially the blind dude. I'm glad he's dead. And yeah, you listen. Obviously, you can see I'm not sympathetic to asshole characters. Um, but James Holden's whole journey this season was the anchor, because he was the guy who, while everyone else is focused on whatever it is that they're focused on, he's the guy trying to get to the deeper level and see, like, what is the big picture behind all of this, instead of it just being some personal thing where it's like, oh, I'm trying to show people that it is I who is the true power, and all this other stuff that everyone else was kind of fighting over. So you know, again, this is part of the reason why I will not give any sympathy to Melba, is because, while he's actually trying to save humanity from possibly being wiped out by the proto molecule and kind of this automated system that it was running on, he's now has to worry about people trying to fucking blow him in his crew away because of this fucking psycho. Um, so for him to have to deal with that, plus he's got this apparition who's plaguing him now, who's like, nah, you got to go to the ring, and every other fucking thing is doors and corners and doors and corners. And it's like, dude, enough with the fucking doors and corners already, man. you know, um, so you obviously glad to see Thomas Jane back. I think he's a phenomenal actor. Um, and I'm wondering, obviously, where this is gonna go now that we've seen the end of this storyline play out. I mean, again, as everyone else has touched on, the 2001 Space Odyssey kind of scene. When I first saw that, I was like, "Whoa, what is this? What is this?" I had to watch that like 3 or 4 times, and I'm still not 100% sure what all of it means, because I'm pretty sure they're gonna touch back on it to give a little more context. But again, it was one of those mind blowing kind of things that I was amazed by. And shout out to the actors workout, because he must have been doing some serious chest and ab work, right before that scene. So I really got to get back in the fucking gym. But yeah, that whole storyline to me was great. I got no problems with that at all. And shout out to Doors and Corners. I think someone needs to make that a podcast or something.
I think all your money was saying it should be a T-shirt in the chat there. Cool.
I'd buy that shirt. I'd buy that shirt.
I mean, I think they say that even more. In fact, after reading, I was so sick of, all right, enough with the doors and corners. So it's good that they brought that into the show as well. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to our last little topic here for the night, and that is the Behemoth storyline. Reservoir Dogs reference. I mispronounced it on purpose. Anyway, let's get into the last storyline with the Behemoth and and so this was really, really changed for the books, and I actually, for the most part, liked it, except for the rush ending at the end. I think more time should have been spent on that, but other than that, I enjoyed what the show did with it. They totally changed the character of Ashford. He's totally different guy, and they introduced Drummer and Naomi into the storyline instead of the characters that was in the book. And I like the dynamic these three had. They set up a different dynamic where we had almost a Civil War type thing, where Drummer was Fred Johnson's man, or woman, and Ashford was Dawes's man, and so the two of them sort of had that distinct distrust for each other, and you see them earn that trust, although maybe that scene could have been a bit shorter, but you see them earn the trust throughout this journey, and then only to it end with them having to go against each other again, which I really think was well earned. It's not because they didn't like each other, but it's because they simply had different ideas of what needed to be done to save humanity, which was a really interesting storyline. It was great getting how everyone sort of converged on the behemoth at the end of the season, where you get Holden and everyone, and Anna and everyone on the behemoth, and they're all sort of have different ideas on which way to go, what to do, which resulted in a little battle, a bit too little for my taste. But regardless of that, really fascinating. I did, you can't fault they got really high quality actor with David. Is it Strathairn or Darrin? I can never pronounce his name right. But well-known actor they got to play Ashford, did an amazing job. And I actually think that Cara G, who plays a drummer, even though she's somewhat new to acting, was amazing chemistry. Like the two of them, like I just love their scenes together. Other than the whole trapped in the room thing, but other than that, I love the chemistry between these two characters, and I thought it really enhanced the scene. And I did find that ending, rushed as it was, really intense and well earned. So anyway, let's start with you, Don. What were your thinking on this whole ending storyline here?
Listen, I've been saying it since day one. Ashford. I did not trust that guy. I know that you guys happen to feel a little differently about him. That he wasn't all about ambition to be the big man in the belt. But again, when he had the opportunity to show that he was about the larger picture, that he wasn't about his own self glory, he failed. He failed that test miserably, and yeah, I'm not surprised. Drummer saw it coming. Niobe saw it coming, and yeah, I don't understand how you guys didn't take to it. I mean, not that you didn't see it coming, but okay. Yeah, but I mean, I think you guys were a lot more forgiving of his actions than I was. But like I've stated in earlier reviews, unfortunately, it seemed that too many people who were on the Behemoth were all about how can we blow something up. And it seemed like no matter what obstacles they ran into with the proto molecule and the ring and the nucleus inside the ring, it was all, how can we blow some shit up? And, and again, this is part of the reason why Holden was such an anchor for the story, because he's the one that was trying to figure out, okay, look, what does this all mean? Is there some resolution to where humanity doesn't get wiped out? And Drummer finally came around. I mean, it took her back being broken and Asher basically almost causing a mutiny of his own in order for her to actually come around. But she finally did. I mean, after she decided to blow up the Rocinante. But look, I had very few issues with the story overall. On the Behemoth, I thought that the things played out the way that they should have. Even though, again, at the end, things did get kind of rushed. In terms of just kind of coming to the final resolution, but yeah, overall, I thought this was a great end to the season. They put the things in place that needed to be there and set up the storyline and had it move. Although, yeah, Mark, I do agree. The whole thing inside of inside of the cargo bay with those two trying to, build up the trust. That nice little trust exercise did go on for a tad too long. It could have been shortened by maybe about 10 minutes, and it wouldn't have affected much. Um, I'm glad that fucking kid is dead because he was an asshole, and I'm tired of these weird talking motherfuckers anyway. I'm like, dude, okay, you guys still part of the same damn species. I don't understand how you all supposedly speak English, but it's become this fucking ultra broken thing with like it sounds like the grown-ups in Charlie Brown. I'm like, the what? English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Oi, what you talking about, Pampa?
Yeah, I was like, oh my fucking god. So and that kid, I forget what the hell his name is. He's inconsequential anyway. He was the worst offender of all. So I'm glad that little bastard is gone. Unfortunately, he took Bobby's armor with him. So hopefully she gets some new armor. And it's funny because even with the situation with the Martian Marines when they were going after Holden, she was the only level-headed one. Everyone else, they automatically believed that James Holden was a fucking terrorist, and not just a terrorist, but a mass murderer. They automatically believed this. Like, dude, do you not see the shit that he sacrificed? Like, literally a couple of months ago, you think he did all that just to, just so you now can have him go and blow some shit up to try to claim dominion over something that no one understands. And while Bobby is trying to explain that to, uh, not only her squad, but the higher ups, no one wants to listen to her. And it's funny because if you think about it, last season and earlier this season, she was the one that was kind of in the position of I just want to blow something up. I just want to shoot shit up all the damn time. And I think because of her interactions with the Rossi crew, it finally showed her like you can't just always think that okay, yeah, how many bullets can I put through this will be the answer to everything. And the funny thing about it though is like when you see the scene where Holden's like, look, I gotta complete the circuit, she does fire on Holden's, which I was very disappointed in her about that one. But then after that, when when the damn captain decides to throw that grenade, and the proto molecule basically rips him apart in order to create a band-aid for itself. The other Marines blame Holden for that. It's like, you dumb fucks, where would he get the power to do that? He didn't have the power to do anything else before. Now all of a sudden, you're saying he has telekinetic powers to rip people apart. So yeah, man. Fuck those guys. I'm glad that they died in that firefight. And yeah, I'm just again, I like where the story went. I like the resolution. I can't wait to see what happens now that all of these gates are open to all of these different parts of the galaxy. Because that's kind of what it seems like, is that the nucleus opened up gates all across the galaxy. But now the investigator wants to kind of know, like, okay, well, who killed off the species that created the proto molecule? And hopefully the investigator isn't the only one that is going to be asking that question, because I'm thinking that the answer to that question is either going to be the death of a lot of people, or it's going to it's going to be the key to humanity's survival.
Cool. All right, so Atkin, let's get your thoughts on the whole Behemoth storyline and sort of ending thing.
Yeah, well, I'm also glad that that kid is dead. Although we don't know that he's dead, I'm worried that he's still going to be alive. Like, because they'll say, "Oh, his armor protected him," and I hope not. But I'm not, I'm not as glad as Don is that all these other characters are dead. I don't know. We argued a bunch about the Ashford thing before. I still think you're oversimplifying it. Nobody is saying that he didn't turn out bad at the end. In fact, we were saying that Drummer shouldn't be bringing him a bottle of whiskey after what he did to her. Like, she forgave him way too much. But it was not black and white. It was there's a lot of shades of gray in there. He had some good intentions. He was genuine when he said that, when he told Naomi, well, we were expecting a mutiny. No, she saved my life and I saved hers. That was all genuine. But once he had that taste of the power, he couldn't stop himself. He couldn't control himself. And I'm not saying that, it's good or I forgive him or any of that stuff. I'm just saying that it's more complicated than he was just a bastard the whole time and all he is a bastard. And remember, what he was doing was what he believed would save humanity. Now, was he a boneheaded bastard who couldn't listen to reason? Was he drunk on his own power? Yeah, he was drunk on his own power, and no, he wouldn't listen to reason. He was a little bit of bonehead. All of that is true about him, but I just found it a little more complicated than him just being a bastard. Like, not like Melba. So I'll just contrast that. I thought Melba was a mustache twirling villain. I thought Ashford was a much better developed three-dimensional character. Maybe it's because it was played by a really good actor, but I just think in general the character development and there was much, much better. That yes, in the end he was a bastard, but it's a little more complicated than that. But anyways, as far as this whole storyline goes, yeah, I honestly, this is the one case where I don't know if I would feel, with the Melba thing aside, we already talked about the Melba, but I don't know that I would necessarily have felt that it is as rushed as you did, Mark, without having read the books until you brought it all up. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can see that. This kind of does seem, you tell, well, there's a whole big civil war in the books. And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see how that is rushed. But Melba thing aside, I think just taking it at face value, if you didn't tell me a thing about the books, I don't know that I would necessarily feel like that it was really all that rushed. It would just feel like that's what they always had planned. But that's without having read the books. But yeah, Melba thing aside, I did love the ending, and I also had no problem with the elevator shaft scene. I know you had a little bit of issues with that, Mark. I thought all that is good. I'm glad the drummer survived. I still don't think she should have brought Ashford some goddamn whiskey. But all in all, I actually really loved the storyline in the ending, and I thought it was a pretty climactic ending for the storyline. It took me a little bit to buy into it. I think in the beginning I was like, well, Drummer is a character we've seen but barely, and who is this new guy? So this was a storyline that I was really sold on, and by the end of it, I really did buy into these characters. And I'll just echo again, I agree, the whole being trapped in the cargo bay thing was a little drawn out. We've talked about that before. But all in all, I actually did find that this storyline was very satisfying. And maybe that's why they didn't kill off Ashford. I know, Mark, you wanted them to kill him off because they killed him off in the books.
Well, not just because that. I think it would have worked for the show, too. And I was going to say that I'm fine with Drummer surviving. In fact, I'm glad she did. But I think Ashford should have died. I really strongly feel that.
Yeah, well, I know. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying I think that's probably the reason why the show, one of the reasons they're keeping him, because he worked so well. And also because the actor is really good. And so they probably just want to keep him. I don't know what they could do with him. I think, I kind of do agree with you. They probably should have killed him off. Like, I don't know what they do with him next. Are they just going to throw him in there and just pretend like he didn't shoot a dude and who disagreed with him on the bridge? Are they gonna, like, all's forgiven and Drummer and him are pals again? Like, I think, drinking whiskey together and they're all buddies. So, like, I don't know. So I do kind of agree with you. They probably should have just killed him off. I'm just thinking from the show's perspective, oh, this is a great character. He worked really well and this actor's really good. We'll keep him around.
All right, so Darren, your thoughts on the whole Behemoth storyline?
Yeah, probably a little different take on the interaction between Drummer and Ashford. I liked their dynamic, and I liked them in a way because it played a lot with expectations. Because we are expecting Ashford to be coming in ready to overthrow. He wants to be captain. He's just looking for his opportunity, and he's going to step up. And I think that is a lot of the expectation that we had with it. And I think part of the reasons what makes him so interesting is I didn't feel at the end, and yes, all of the interaction leading up to the big, long, drawn-out, trapped in the room scene, but that sort of served its purpose, I think, because what we find out is he really does seem to, at least purport, and I believe that this carries through, that he is looking to change. He is looking for a larger picture. I mean, what he says is, the Belchers used to just be all about ourselves, and I want now it to be something that we can sacrifice. A Belcher does what needs to be done for everybody. I want that to be the new Belcher way. I think he is somebody who is trying to move past the expectations that we're putting on him and have him a much more fleshed out, three-dimensional, wanting, not really dissimilar things. And I think that's why Drummer was so ready to hand over the captaincy to him at that point, as I think he had demonstrated, and I think honestly so, that he wasn't a rival. He wasn't there just to overthrow, that he was looking to even put himself in a subservient position if that was the best for the belt, and maybe contribute his knowledge and stuff to it. Yes, once he kind of gets the little bits of reins of power, that does kind of a little bit go to his head, but I'm not sure if really in a way too much. He is committed to a particular viewpoint, and I think he's trying to do the best within that. Unfortunately, a lot of those best intentions does reflect on where he's come from, and like you guys had mentioned, it tends to involve blowing things up. Yes, he's looking to get a little bit more information, but let's do it from a bomb way. On the same way, when Holden does come up on board, he doesn't want to consider anything that he is actually telling him because it puts him outside of his comfort zone. And I think that limitation of viewpoint is what really ends up making him the bad guy at the end. And I think that's why Drummer did bring the whiskey, is because I think while she disagreed with him and while he wasn't willing to listen to her, he'd gotten in the captain's seat and had committed himself to these viewpoints and wasn't going to be swayed by anyone, even the actual captain. I think she could still recognize that while his methods were wrong, his goal was still something bigger than himself. It wasn't just about his own grasping of power. There was a little bit of played into that. My ship. I mean, come on, that was the line right there. This ship, my ship, has spin capabilities. It's all about me. There was a little bit of that grab on. But I think, especially I think at the end, when we had that last moment of Ashford turning away from Drummer a little bit when she brings out the whiskey, is that kind of, he doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that he did make that mistake, that there was a better way, that he should have listened like she did. And that's why she is the captain and why he isn't. And I think maybe that was a little bit of a humility point. And maybe Drummer was willing to sort of rub that in a little bit extra as a reminder. I think it's Diogo, I think, is the Belcher there that was the problem solver. To me, he was really the one that we were, while we're expecting Ashford the one to mutiny, I think it was Diogo the one that was ready to do it at a moment's notice. I did. I never appreciated Bobby taking off her armor when she got on. Certainly not. They should have just stored it on her own ship. Shouldn't have given it to the Belters. Even when Amos comes aboard, he heads over the weapon, and then they take Melba away, and he's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna need that back right now. That gun." You wouldn't put that much trust in the behemoth or its security personnel to be watching after anything there. Though I appreciated him getting taken out, the whole elevator sequence. And again, mostly because it was a great, unexpected, but natural movement. That's where we're thinking Drummer's going to sacrifice. She's ready to do it. I'm wounded. I'm slowing you down. I've got to stop. You guys are the only ones to do it. Again, the captain move. And then our expectations get subverted so beautifully by that elevator coming down and just taking him out. There was a large visceral, I think, satisfaction that went down with all of that. And then when as we get to the ending, this to me was why everybody was there. Now, again, like Acton, I haven't read the books, so I didn't really have any expectation coming in. Yeah, there were a couple of pacing issues, but I think overall, I didn't know what was missing or what else should have been there, so I was just going with what was being presented, and it all mostly worked for me. But when we get to that big final scene where we've got Anna speaking into to all of the ships through the comm system, that to me, that is why all of these characters were just this one moment. Why did we have the camera crew, the documentary crew at the beginning? Just to establish that so we could use her as a reference to come back and get the camera. Why did the cameraman die? Because we didn't need him. He just needed to cause all of his problems in the beginning, and then he was good. It was a bit of a utilitarian use for the characters, but in order to keep the pace going, I thought that it worked. Even Anna, the whole reason that she was brought in, the whole reason that she's been here this season was for this last moment. The appeal to humanity as a recognizable figure. Because she was obviously added on to the first half of the season because she wasn't in that in the books, but we need some way to establish the character. What is she doing up in space and on the Thomas Prince and everything? Not really useful. Just, there, serving its bits. Did she need to be the one that went after Melba in the suit and everything? Maybe yes, maybe no. Was it necessary? Could Naomi have turned the tables on Melba and caught her? If they wanted to do it, they could have accomplished that. But they needed her character for this moment. And in that way, I think everything that Anna was there and through all of this allowed us to believe that she was important in this moment and was the character that people could recognize and carry out. And that's why Amos became that protector there, because she was somebody that would put herself out, ready to get shot and killed to make a desperate plea to humanity in a way to save them. So I thought this was a great way of illustrating why all of our people were there. And it put them in the story for a reason. So we didn't really have that extraneous feel to them, except, like I said, the cameraman, but he died off screen, so who really cares? And anyway, I thought that was great. Melba's change, again, I'm with you, Don. I didn't really like Melba. She was an annoying character. She was definitely much more one-dimensional than someone like Ashford was. I thought Ashford was a much more sympathetic character in many ways than Melba was, even though we see that she's doing it, to try and gain the love of her father. But that exchange sequence of having Holden in the next cell, I love that moment where she starts laughing as Holden's like, "Hi, I'm Jim. What are you in for?" And she's like, "Oh my God, if I get free, I could kill him with my own bare hands." You're kind of expecting that, but instead she gets exposed to the truth and the honesty of this person who is trying his best to do the right thing and being thrown in a situation that he couldn't control. So, I mean, again, I thought all of that worked. So when we did have that big finale sequence and the fact that she uses that in the end, Melba uses the information she got from Ren about the buffers. If you switch the buffers, that's going to cause a cascading failure. So she was able to use the information from the beginning of the season to turn around and do the big win at the end. So also, I thought that was sort of a great way of bringing things all around. So I think even though it may have felt a little bit rushed at times, I thought that this second half did a great job of justifying all of the characters and bringing all of this information that we have been exposed to all the way around to serve an important purpose. And such as a finale, I thought that it was fabulous. Not to mention the fact that now we have literal stargates all over the place to explore our expanse. I think is really gets me super excited for what's coming up next.
Yeah, cool. That is interesting. I will say in the books, Anna was the one who captured Melba, and it really worked. They explained it. They explained how she was able to go after her, and it was an awesome scene that I loved. So I was really fucked up that they messed it up in the show. So it didn't necessarily need to be named when you take her out. They could have had Anna, but they should have handled it better. But well, the other thing I was going to say was that Don, I think you're being too hard on Ashford, and Darrin, I think you're being too soft on him. I mean, he killed the guy in the head, and he told Drummer, "You're not captain anymore. I'm captain." He should be, at the very least, arrested, thrown in a dark cell. I think Melba should have snapped his neck instead of just knocking him out. So the whole whiskey thing, I still, no matter what, I do not buy. But that is just me. Anyway.
It was just a red shirt that he killed. It's not important. But they're there for.
It was Gregory.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Space him.
Yes, Space Ashford. That's what a hashtag. I'm gonna do a hashtag campaign. Space Ashford. But anyway, let's go ahead and just wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for your thoughts. Just really quick, keep this kind of succinct so we don't go on for too long. Thoughts on the end of the season. Like, what are you glad? Like, what would you think of this season if, in fact, Amazon did not pick the show up and this is it? This is the end of the show. How would you feel about it? And what do you feel about the fact that Amazon did pick it up, and what do you hope to see in general, generally speaking, in the next season? Akton, we'll start with you.
Oh, I am thankful that Amazon Prime picked it up, because I would be very disappointed if this was the ending. I would be like, this is how the show ended. So disappointing. I mean, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the finale, but it was, as I said, this was my least favorite season, particularly because of the second half. I had a lot of problems with it. So I feel like optimistic that they're going to right the ship in season 4, especially since they're now going to be on track to have hopefully one book per season and not have this jarring shift in the middle. We know that we're going to start season 4 with book 4. So hopefully I'm hoping things will smooth out from here on. So I'm very optimistic about the future of the show. I've seen how good this show can be, and I think it's only going to get better from here. So I'm very optimistic about it. But if this were the end, I'd be like, oh man, like I would be very disappointed. So I'm very, very thankful that it is continuing forward. Now, as for what we think is going to happen, I think we talked about this last week a little bit too. If I recall, like projections of what's going to happen. You know, I don't know. Like, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just going to say I'm really curious to see what happens, because I want to move on and let Don and Darrin have a chance to talk.
Cool. So, Darrin, your thoughts?
Let's see. If this had been the end, yeah, I mean, I was certainly super excited the way that it went. I was like, man, look at all the places we're going to go. So there would have been a level of disappointment. However, from a storytelling standpoint, there was a certain there was a certain finality to everything. There was a lot of tying up storylines in a lot of ways. And maybe that's the reason why they pushed everything and wanted to end this. They sort of saw where things were going and wanted to move to sort of take chances. I don't know. But we did sort of, we finished up the war in the first half of the season, and then we're actually kind of bringing all of humanity together against a common cause at the very end of it. So while we start the whole series on the verge of war, by the end we actually have humanity bonded together, ready to go and explore the universe to a big larger world. So in many ways it's a great way to sort of sum everything up. That Bobby is on the crew of the Rossi was awesome, because really, how many times can you betray your own army there? She already left to go with Avasarala, and then she had to turn against them in order to save Holden. So again, I think it really works. It wraps up a lot of those storylines. However, super excited that Amazon has picked it up and really can't wait to see where they're going to take it. Is this world exploring? Is this a larger enemy that they're going to run into? I know they sort of hinted a few different things. But what I really want to hit on, and again, if this is spoiler, keep me in the dark by all means, is I do believe there's still a piece of the proto-molecule stuck inside the hull of the Rossi. And I don't think they ever dealt with that. Maybe they did and I forgot. But at the very beginning of the season, they sort of implied it was hidden under there. They didn't get it when they were cleaning. And then it wasn't really hinted onto. I think they showed it in a previous episode to one of the last few episodes. So I was expecting to come up maybe in a connection with Miller. But to me, that's one of those small little loose ends that's sort of floating out there. Is this mean something, or is this going to blow up more, or is this going to train to some new storyline? So that is something that I would be hoping kind of gets dealt with going forward.
Cool. So Don, your thoughts?
Like I said, I was happy with the ending as a whole. Again, even with the parts that were rushed, I mean, yes, they were rushed, but it's not like they weren't ever set up. So it wasn't the big disappointment for me that it might have been for some of you guys. I would have been very, very sad if this would have been the end, especially the fact that I got into it and I kind of rushed into all of this stuff. But I'm glad that Amazon picked it up for a fourth season. Like I said, I just hope that they don't decide to do the Netflix thing and say, here, go ahead and binge everything, because I do think that would be a mistake. But I am very much excited to see what happens with the next season. And as far as the proto-molecule thing, I picked up on that, before they went into the ring. So, I kind of figured that's where Miller was emanating from. So, and plus he said he needed to hitch a ride. So, I'm glad that Miller's going to be around, talking about more doors and corners for a little while.
Oh, absolutely cool. So yeah, let's just go ahead and end this discussion here. Thank you guys so much. It was a great discussion, great talking about The Expanse. Long wait till season 4. Hopefully not too long of a wait. If we can get it in. Hopefully, as you said, Don, hopefully Amazon is wise enough to not drop it all at once. And so we can talk about it weekly again next year, which I'm really hoping for. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks for everyone in the chat, Colonel Doomsday, all your money, and everyone else who joined, everyone who's watching this in the archives. Thank you so much. And my Expanse coverage isn't over. I shall be back sometime next week with my predictions for season 4. However, thinking about how I'm going to structure the video, there's no possible way I can do this without getting into book spoilers. So I'm going to make that video a book spoiler, unfortunately. But I will have more Expanse videos to come. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. And if you just want to give a quick shout out, what you're up to, where people can find you, we'll start with you, Darrin.
Thanks, Mark, as always, for having me on here chatting about The Expanse. Can't wait for season 4. You can always catch me on D's Reviews. I'm doing Preacher this summer. Still trying to put together my fall programming. Definitely going to be doing The Gifted. Everything else, Mr. Robot, depends on when they're coming out. So we've got to kind of wait and see on that. And you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram at DARRINJAQUES.
Cool. And Don, where can people find you?
You can find me on my channel, Don of Ice and Fire, where hopefully I will be back to putting together a new video soon. And if not, you can catch me on my other channel, Don Entertainment, where I will be doing another Westworld video, or kind of a theory video that should be up sometime tomorrow. But Mark, thank you again for having me, and to the rest of everyone else, have a good night.
Cool. And Atkin.
I am Akton Tamko. You can find me on Akton Tamko's channel. I don't have anything planned for the immediate future, but you can go back and watch all of my Westworld reviews, as well as Game of Thrones, Star Trek The Next Generation, Mr. Robot, and many others. I will probably at some point this summer, I do want to do like a Westworld rewatch, probably do a rewatch and theories video on it, but I don't have a timetable for that. But look out for that at some point. And then as we get closer to Game of Thrones, we'll start getting into Game of Thrones predictions and stuff like that. So check out my channel. And once again, it's been a blast all season long, Mark. So thanks for having me talk about The Expanse. And hopefully we get to do it next year, week by week. And I agree with you. I'll echo what you guys said. Hopefully it'll drop it all at once. So thanks a lot. It's been fun.
Cool. And if you're finding me for the first time, my channel is Enchantment of Eternity. I'm Mark. I shall continue to do Expanse videos during the off season. I also cover other shows like Star Trek. Finally going to get back into doing some Game of Thrones videos soon. Also covering Babylon 5, which I really enjoyed watching season 4. It reminds me that the show is actually good. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.